Fitness assessments are a functional tool for fitness professionals to understand how a client moves and identify potential muscular dysfunctions. There are many assessments that can be used for general fitness, special populations, and even athletes. The needs of the client will determine which you'll choose. It's important to know that fitness and performance assessments are not intended to diagnose and are not used to identify structural issues. For example, scoliosis, the sideways curvature of the spine. A trainer may observe it in a postural assessment, but may only use the info to ensure the client doesn't do anything that can make it worse. We can't do anything to treat it. Movement and strength assessments are the most common ones we'll use. You'll give the client enough information so they understand the movement they need to perform, but we don't coach them through it. We don't want them to perform the movement perfectly. We do want to see their normal movement tendencies. If they have overactive or underactive muscles, that's what we're looking to identify. Movement and posture assessments will be observed from the lateral and anterior views, side and front. You'll have the client perform 5 to 15 repetitions. Anything more can cause fatigue, especially in deconditioned individuals. Be sure to write down what you observe. Don't just try and remember it for later. Your observations become a part of the client's profile. When you're looking at the movement patterns using the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, you'll always start from the ground up. Foot and ankle, knees, hips, shoulders, head and neck. It's easiest to observe all 5 points from one view before switching to the other. You'll also have the option to have the client do these assessments with or without shoes when applicable. Whichever you choose, make sure you repeat it with each reassessment. With client permission, you may be able to record a video from one or both angles for a review later as well. As a side note, keep in mind it's considered private data if you take a photo or video, so protect it along with the client's profile information. It's not a best practice to store these images on your personal device. If you utilize this media often, it's probably a good idea to invest in a device strictly for your business. If you use strength or performance assessments, you'll want to choose ones that are applicable to the client. Some standard assessments are the bench press or squat. But assessments like the vertical jump or cone agility are great for a basketball player, but useless for a swimmer, for example. Finally, make sure your client is cleared and healthy enough to perform any cardiovascular assessments. Understand that deconditioned clients may need modifications or shortened assessments to avoid an acute health episode based on their medical history. Other clients may have difficulty completing the assessments. The last thing you want to do is belittle or discourage someone for not getting through it. These assessments are difficult but should not harm the participant. All assessments should be repeated at given intervals to measure progress, like once a month or every 3 months. Be transparent about your testing frequency with clients from the start. This can motivate the client and help you as the fitness professional continue to program effectively.
Cardiorespiratory training doesn't have to be boring, long, slow exercise. It can and should be fun and engaging. Several cardio training systems are discussed in the textbook, but let's explore how they challenge the cardiorespiratory system and how to execute them properly. We'll focus on high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, fartlek training, steady-state training, circuit training, and cross training. High-intensity interval training, or HIIT, is a form of interval training. It is characterized by bursts of near maximal intensity, anaerobic resistance, or cardiovascular activity followed by periods of rest or reduced intensity. Working rounds are usually greater than 80% of maximum effort, and rest is performed at 50% of maximum or less. These cycles are repeated for the desired number of rounds or total time. During HIIT training, the intensity of the activity will also determine how long the training sessions can be. For example, exercise rounds with an intensity between 85 and 90% of maximum effort will not be able to be performed for as long as exercise rounds with an intensity of 70 to 80% of maximum effort before fatigue sets in. HIIT training challenges the heart and lungs during the high-intensity bouts of activity. As a result, it can have positive effects on VO2 max, metabolic rate, short-term calorie expenditure, and lung capacity. HIIT can also include resistance tools like kettlebells, dumbbells, and bands. The use of resistance training tools can increase muscular endurance and strength. The intensity of training can be increased during the work intervals by increasing the load, speed of movement, or time under tension. Fartlek training is a running style that introduces intervals into a long-distance run. The intervals can be time-based or random. During an outdoor fartlek run, physical landmarks along the running route are often used to initiate an increase or a decrease in running speed. For example, you start with a light jog as you begin your run. When you reach the next corner, you speed up to a sprint until the next mailbox, where you return to a jogging pace. When you reach the stop sign at the end of the next street, you sprint until you reach the third driveway. Keep in mind, this can be executed indoors as well. The speed can be manually adjusted to create random intervals on a piece of exercise equipment. Fartlek training based on time intervals is relatively simple. Set a timer and either manually change the speed on equipment or change the pace at your timed intervals when outdoors. This style of training is engaging and fun, challenges all three energy systems, and utilizes both the type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers as the running intensity varies. It is an ideal training method for individuals who do exercise or sports that vary in intensity like football, rugby, or soccer. Steady-state cardio training is an endurance pace. That means it can be done for extended periods, is a moderate effort, and is at a pace that can be maintained, like jogging at 6 miles an hour on a treadmill for 90 minutes. This training style improves muscular endurance for type 1 muscle fibers, improves the efficiency of the cardiorespiratory system, and can promote the utilization of fat for cellular energy when the intensity is moderate. Circuit training is a style of training that uses a series of stations or exercises that are done one after the other with minimal rest in between. Training sessions will last between 20 and 60 minutes, and since there is little rest between exercises, the resistance is generally kept lower while repetitions may be higher. This makes it different from HIIT training, which requires a higher intensity work period. Circuit training is an effective workout that can be done in a relatively short amount of time, and it's been found to help increase strength, increase short-term calorie expenditure, and improve cardiorespiratory function. Finally, cross-training. Cross-training is when you train in sports or activities outside of the norm, like when a basketball player takes a few weeks to play and train for volleyball. They'll be able to work on their jumping, footwork, and coordination in a different way. Or a bodybuilder takes a few weeks to train for the adaptation of power and agility. They'll be training more type 2 muscle fibers than with their usual lifting style, and will likely see different mechanical adaptations as a result. The end goal of cross-training is to improve overall physical and athletic performance and use training methods you typically don't use to challenge the body in a new or different way. From what we know of the principle of overload, the SAID principle, and acute training variables, cross-training with right amount of effort or stimulus can generate adaptations faster. As you can see, there are many ways to challenge the cardiorespiratory system and the body as a whole when training. Not every client is going to want or need to try all of these training methods, but there are plenty of options to keep it interesting.
Exercise programming is something you'll be spending a lot of time doing as a personal trainer. Each workout has to be tailored for the client's individual goals, and their overall program should follow a progression. The progressions are relatively simple and are used to gradually increase the client's strength, neuromuscular recruitment and coordination, systematically challenge the body, and prevent injury. There is no set amount of time it will take to progress each client, but follow these general guidelines. Stable to unstable. A client will need to master a movement pattern on a stable surface, like a two-footed or seated body position, before they can progress to less stable environments like standing on one leg or standing on a Bosu ball. This also applies when progressing from 2 hands or 2 feet to 1. Challenges to balance create instability. Static to dynamic. A client will need to start with an unmoving static challenge before they can progress to challenging the same muscles in a fluid, dynamic way. For example, starting with a plank before progressing to a plank with any type of movement, like a leg raise or a hip dip. Slow to fast. Clients will learn and master movement patterns when they complete them slowly before they speed them up. For example, learning to do a strict shoulder press before executing a push press. Simple to complex. Movement patterns should start off simple with the goal of building functional strength and mastering the pattern before more complex variations are introduced. For example, having a client begin with an abdominal crunch exercise before they progress to leg raises or Russian twists. Light to heavy. Load or resistance should be kept lighter while the client is learning the movement pattern and building strength and coordination. This applies to resistance training and cardiorespiratory training. Again, the goal is to master the movement pattern with a lighter weight before adding load for the same movement pattern to prevent injury and encourage optimal neuromuscular adaptations. Known to unknown. Clients should begin with movement patterns they know before executing ones they are unfamiliar with. The goal is to promote proper muscular recruitment to create the desired movements and minimize muscular compensations. Muscular compensations occur when muscles other than the intended prime movers dominate or movement is compromised. Both of these situations can lead to injury. Keep these progressions in mind when you program for yourself and for your clients. When you consider the goals of the overall macrocycle and the specific mesocycle the client is in, it makes applying these to each microcycle or individual training session easier.